Hello, ladies and gentlemen, the Drunken Tarrasque, with me and Rachel.
So we're not doing the opening line anymore?
You have an opening line idea, because I am recording. But no, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to set you up, teach you how to be the ultimate villain.
I thought we were just talking about villains in general.
Well, I mean, come on, being a villain, making a villain, is it really that different?
Well, you know, if you're the villain, I would imagine you wouldn't be listening to this podcast now, you'd be in jail. Hopefully.
But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about how to make a villain. And that in and of itself, I think, personally me, it defines your game, it defines your universe. Without a great villain, you're kind of going to struggle at making a great game. Now, the first question I always ask on making the villain, is this your main villain or just a minor villain? And after that, everything starts to fall into place. And Rachel had one of those points about making a villain is making a villain, the villain, or a villain, the foil of your players. And I'll let her continue on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the whole idea about creating a character foil is it's a character that, by being alike or in the ways that they are alike or indifferent to the main characters, show you what's important about the rest of your characters. So you have to make them in a way relatable and similar to your characters if you're going to have one that's a foil.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's actually where where my brain starts lying in there. It's like, if you're going to make a personal foil or any villain, first question the next question to ask is, what tier level are you going at? Are you looking at levels 1 through 4 or 17 through 20? Again, I'm looking at 5th edition in particular. Why I look at this specifically is that the higher the level, the more agency the villain will have. And if that's the case, that ultimately makes the point of how far-reaching, how dangerous, and how likely is this villain to actually see your characters. And that, if you're a level 1, if you're looking at a very low level, they're probably in the same region, the same area. There's a chance that they may have just accidentally ran into each other. If you're looking at higher level villains, odds are they've never had any personal contact. And for me, when you make a villain, I hate the idea of making the villain immediately showing up front and center. It is, I think, the worst style of introducing a villain, because you now lose the mystique of what this villain is, and if you have very good players and role players, it doesn't allow you to actually flush out your villain to customize him for your said players.
That was a mouthful right there.
Well, it's a mouthful because when you make a villain, you gotta think on a lot of things. If you have a level 20 villain, well, that means, in D&D terms, he probably has a global empire that can actually manipulate governments and institutions. But if you have a character that's only level 4 or 5, or even 3, you're looking at a character that most likely is probably just a local thug that has more power than normal.
Well, it's the difference between dealing with the Sheriff of Nottingham and dealing with Prince John, I suppose.
Well, again, that's the thing, is that's very important, how you select those two specific. They're very similar, and that's kind of one of my other important design philosophies with making a villain. It is not about something crazy, is that if you have say, Prince John, he has all these lackeys that connect to him. You can always hear from the lackeys of how evil this villain is, how demonic he is, what he's done to the people, stolen from the people, and it actually builds that repertoire of vileness.
Yeah. It's like the difference between Dracula and Renfield. You remember?
Yes. And actually, that's the thing, is when you look at that, you start realizing the villain is like a great mystery that your players have to solve. Anytime someone role plays, it's
I was gonna say it's the primary motivating factor that that is gonna move your players forward. If the villain isn't good, if it's not there, everything's just gonna start petering out and getting flat. It's like and boring.
Oh, that's one of the biggest problems I've ever seen is that many of these people go for these flashy villains, and a flashy villain is usually the most boring. Look at, I was going to say, what was it, Batman the Animated Series, the Joker, or Two-Face. Like, they are big bombastic characters, but what makes them dangerous is not that they are flashy, it's because they have reaching influence, that when they are defeated, they have escape plans. And larger villains...
their brutality, honestly. Or at least, from my perspective, when I used to watch Batman the Animated Series, everything would just sort of be fun and games, and then things would turn dark for a moment. And you'd see the true darkness of the Joker, the true darkness of Two-Face, and you're like, oh crap, these people aren't messing around. They will kill people. They will do really awful stuff, and they'll do it with a smile. And when you see that, it gets messed up pretty quickly.
Well, one of my other techniques I say for making a great villain, and this is why I do have that philosophy of making the main villain subtly in the shadows. Even if it's hinted at, oh, we're worried about this invading imperial army from some faraway land, is that it allows you for your players to make their own villains, regardless of what they think. Kyloth the Blue Fury is something that Rachel had helped create because someone had this great evil half-dragon charge them. They slammed the gate, snapping off his arm, and plinging arrows that took off one of his eyes.
Well, that wasn't me. I mean, I think that was like the other people in the thing. But yeah, I was there, but I wasn't.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. I take detailed notes. So Rachel was the one who started talking about slamming the door on this half dragon's arm to stop it from ripping in and slaughtering the innocent people. I did? Yes.
Oh.
Yes. This is why I said
damn your detailed notes.
Yes, you can't get away from fucking around with me. But this is why when you build that villain, why I say the main villain should be significantly mysterious, is that it allows subplots, sub-stories to evolve out of the player's gameplay. You don't have that subtlety, you start losing that ability to actually having the story naturally go in a direction. Because great DMs, when they find a villain that is just appearing out of the shadows, or a new one that arises, they will let the players chase after this person, just snarling and going, I want him dead, he's harmed me, he's almost slaughtered these people, we gotta find him. And it also makes this cat and mouse game appear natural. You also have that idea that, hey, you hurt this one guy, he's gonna bring his own guys, and then it actually makes the world organically live around the players. They've actually created their own villain, and then they have this invested interest of solving any of the problems that inadvertently happen through their actions. Again, this causes this emotional investment in players that go, wow, we got to do something.
Well, I think we should also discuss, because we only have so much time on this, the different kinds of villains, because usually I think there's a tendency for people to go the direction of, evil. Like they're just evil because they can. Yeah, because they're evil. There's no representation for it. There's no explanation for why they are evil. They are just evil because they're evil. And then there's other routes, like where you have the character be an extremely relatable person, but you say that but their philosophy differs from those of the main protagonists and everything like that. What they differ on is the solution to the problem.
Mm-hmm. The equivalent question of lawful good versus lawful evil.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the difference between Charles Xavier and Magneto. Like, they both do things that are not necessarily lawful, in the pursuit of their own goals. However, the main difference is that one thinks it's okay to, protect the humans and that they can be friends, and the other is like, no, fuck that. The only way we're ever going to have freedom is to...
genocide.
is to know dominance, not just genocide, but dominance. I think is the biggest thing with Magneto. The only way they're going to have freedom is through dominance, because nobody's going to ever accept them, and if they play nice, they're just going to end up having more and more rights taken away from them. So I think it's...
Well, that's the thing, is villains are inherent themes for your games that many DMs don't take into consideration. That you cannot just throw certain villains in there. A villain means something. This is one of the important parts with role-playing. Every one of your actions has a meaning, including your villains. And when you embrace that, you start realizing these villains have a purpose. They have their own story arc to tell out. And it just happens to be the antagonist for the villain is your players, and you should be thriving on that. If you have a character that is very concerned with stability and order at all costs because of the dangers that his kingdom fell into ruin, so he rules with an iron fist, so anarchy doesn't reign in his land, that's a very understandable reason and concept.
So what you're saying is basically that all villains should have a reason. I absolutely agree with that.
Oh yeah.
Is that there should never be a villain that is there without a reason. They should always have a reason for being. They should always have a reason for why they believe what it is that they believe.
Exactly.
And, that's what's most important.
Well, that's the thing, is it's not only it's extremely important. Most important is because when you have this happening, if you actually make a villain you understand for your players, you can let the players actually take their own time in your world. Because for me, I build a villain that has his own personal goals, regardless of the players. If he wants to say, conquer this city, I will have him do the action, side role-playing, side story out, and if the players happen to want to engage with this main villain earlier, they can. This is the biggest thing, is that many DMs make this villain and make him static. You never want to make a villain static. You want to make him actively doing things. Even if it's as simple as funding his slave trade or funding anything in his actions in his domain. Because, to be honest, if you leave the villain static, it starts to loosen role-playing possibilities and honest challenge.
And if you really want to make things complicated for players, if you really want to make things if you really want to mess with people who have a hard, good alignment, all you have to do is that when they finally burst in to get at the villain, what do they find? They find not just the villain, but they find extended family, they find other people, they find a community, and there's women and children there.
Yep.
And they're all well taken care of, and you realize that good has happened as a result of bad actions having taken place, and that in removing that, you're going to hurt people. Mm-hmm. You're going to create that power vacuum.
Well, that's actually one of the most important things about making a villain that many players and DMs do not know or remember or think upon, is that moral question, that moral choice. They act like it is, but they've had the easy, I'm fighting the Joker, I'm killing the Joker, thus good is happening. No. If you have a lawful, I'm saying lawful evil for the shorthand for people who understand alignment, who are not pretentious knobs saying it's bad, but those lawful evil empires that are ruling with an iron fist, manipulating people, but they're doing it for stability so more people don't die. You start realizing, oh my god, I could cause chaos. I could cause more destruction. It starts asking, what is the right thing to do? What is the most moral thing to do? Should I depose this guy and take over the lands to actually try to reign better? Does that make me better than the person? These are important questions that a villain can force the players to answer. Now, this only comes with great role players and a great villain. It takes a little time, takes a little elbow grease, but it also opens up the possibility for proper humor in your games. Now, most people don't think on this, and Rachel came up with a very wonderful idea of making a quote-unquote villain that really hit hard and hit heavy, that made me laugh, because it was an actual kind of mischievous, kind of villainous guy, but it was in such a minute way, allowing... Yeah, you can tell the story of what you created.
Okay, what I was saying is, when we were talking about this earlier, I said, what if what if you had this guy who really wanted to be a villain, and he was trying really, really hard, but he was just extraordinarily pathetic, kind of like Professor Chaos in South Park. So he just proceeds to just try and create like villainy throughout the land, but really he just sort of makes things rather just a little bit inconvenient, or a little bit. It's like, oh, I'm just going to bewitch this water, so now that when you drink it, you will not feel refreshed. Your mouth will feel slightly drier than before.
No, this is the important thing with creating villains. Like, that kind of little villain is a perfect respite against any dark, evil, oppressive, dark Nazgul lord. It's kind of what's actually needed that actually gives another amount of depth to your characters. Those are the minor villains. These are the little nobodies that, honestly, after slaying evil, a good chuckle is occasionally good for a healthy game to actually buoy the spirits of your heroes, or the players. It's little things like this, these little changes, and realizing where your villains, your sub-villains, lie. And I look at each tier as a story arc of a villain, and tier 1 to tier 2, level 4 to level 5, you should have a villain that bridges the gap. Because then that perfectly intertwines the whole entire story for everyone to deal with. When you have that...
So, as a respite from this conversation for a moment, I was thinking also that villain from before, if he was really gonna, try to mess with people, he would do that thing where he's gonna move the coffee table like a couple inches to the right, so that when you're walking around at night to use the restroom, you whack your knee. Or you whack your shit.
Why do I have this weird feeling Rachel has a new character for me to deal with?
So I'm saying, like, it's gonna be that kind of thing. It's gonna be like, and he's gonna jump out of the shadows, be like, ha 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 ha, I strike again. I just think it's perfect.
That's actually, again, making a good villain is also knowing when to put characters like that in your game. Because you can't be serious 24/7. You know there's going to be fart jokes and dick jokes all around the campfire during the campaign. Embrace that type of villainy.
Well, the thing is, like, I know not everybody likes that sort of thing, but those people are wrong.
Yes.
Everyone who plays this long enough knows that you start out as, like, Lord of the Rings and end up at Monty Python pretty quickly. It's like, run away!
Well, making the perfect villain is knowing when to embrace the Monty Python level of, what the fuck did I just see? Why did a rabbit just tear out my comrade's throat, my brother's throat? Well, that's an interesting story arc I'm going to go down now. Trust me, it's all. This is a game meant for relaxation and enjoyment. There's a lot of energy put into making it, but as Rachel put it, you end as Monty Python.
Fun. It should always first and foremost be fun, and I think that a good solid villain will just open up a lot of possibilities for your characters. All you have to do is just place that antagonist in the right spot. Mm-hmm. Or the right antagonist in the right spot at the right time, and you're golden.
Mm-hmm. And it's just, again, for a DM, this is a lot of the pre-work. You're going to be doing a lot of little villain creation, and always be prepared for that mid-level, my players have done something really retarded or stupid or antagonized just some random NPC, and be prepared to spin that into another side villain for your players, because when you honestly do that, you're going to get something so much better in the long term. Because, let's be honest, I cannot stop as a DM thinking about Kyloth the Blue Fury, because that one scene where he comes back for revenge, everyone freaked out.
Oh gosh, I remember that. And that is another thing to mention in all of this. I mean, I know we're probably getting to the point where we're getting a bit long-winded, but I think that another reason to emphasize why this is important and to spend a little bit extra time on your villains is because it can work as a balancing factor, like we just discussed, is that if you have certain characters who are not doing what they ought to do, or what they should, you can actually take advantage of their failings and, pop that in there. Like, you can take advantage of all of their failings, and that will provide a really big challenge and a lot of change for the players. They'll either develop and adapt, or they won't.
Mm-hmm. And one last thing I suggest it with a lot of caution. There is no doubt you've played millions and millions and millions of games as a DM and as a player. I suggest with caution if you see a player that's actually playing an evil, villainous way, he may, in the future, become your next villain for your next campaign. I suggest it with caution, because some people cannot take it lightly. They do not take that kindly, but you start realizing there's certain playstyles that lead towards evil, and it's a very marvelous way to have a pre-generated evil villainous character already waiting in the wings that has years of history behind it. Just some people don't like that.
But, make sure that player has totally left your table first.
I wouldn't just say left your table, but more or less, like, make sure that they're able to handle realizing, yeah, you made a villain, you made an evil character. He's my next villain. Have fun defeating him. On that note, thank you for listening to us. Tell us what you think. Tweet us out, throw us all around. We want to grow, we want to do more. In the future, we want to give you actual real characters to use in your games in any way, shape, or form.
Also, remember, we are on Twitter at Drunken Tarrasque. That is Drunken Tarrasque at twitter.com.
Thank you, and God bless.